Waiting for that horn to stop. This is Dusty Sage at MiceChat.com, and we are here at beautiful Disneyland Park in Anaheim, California. This beautiful creature standing next to me is Matt McKim, the Imagineer. Also has a legendary father you may have heard of named Sam McKim. We're going to talk a little bit about both of those guys on this video today. Matt, first of all, before I turn this around, just really quickly so people know who you are here.
Okay.
You worked in Imagineering for a long time yourself.
I did. But actually, since we're standing in Disneyland, I started here out of high school in 1982. So I was here from 82 to 87, and actually I clocked out at 1 a.m. and by 8 a.m. that same day, I was at Imagineering, starting my career at Imagineering.
Wow.
So 7 hours later.
Wow. We're going to take a little journey right now into the park, and we'll do a lot of talking. We have an hour. We'll walk through the park. We'll talk about the latest news, you know, how we feel about the park on its 69th birthday. It's hard to imagine.
Amazing?
I remember the 50th, and it's been, what?
19 years?
Yes, 19 years. Math.
How did that happen?
Math. Next year's a biggie with the 70th. So I'm turning this around and we will talk. Here comes the finger. Beautiful New Orleans Square. Probably the most similar to how it was built of any of the lands. Most of the lands have changed a lot over the years, but New Orleans Square still looks like New Orleans Square. Some changes that we're going to see as we get over by Tiana, but there are walls ahead, Matt.
Yes, there are.
Walls.
Some green walls.
And some cranky spirits on the other side. Looks
Soon to be opening, right?
I think very soon, although there's a lot of construction going on the outside here. They're done with the inside, and they're trying to get it open maybe even later this month so they can get capacity back. Look at the gate, even looks brand new to the mansion.
Oh, it does.
You see that?
Does. Nice and shiny. You know what's too bad is actually over here where the wall is located.
Yes.
On the other side, there's a bush, and it's called a Mickey Mouse bush. And you should actually go by. It's where that little pergola is over there. It's on the back side. And that's not the genius of the plant, but the common name is the Mickey Mouse plant. It's got two black balls, and then there's a red piece that drops below it. And I think there's even a yellow flower that comes out. So it's got all of Mickey's colors.
And it's on the other side of the construction wall. So when it reopens, we'll go see if it's still there.
Yes. Oh, it's got to be. It's got to be.
Oh, I hope so.
But that's a nice little secret that's here in the park.
Now, last week, Mike was with me and he was complaining that guests were walking to get to Galaxy's Edge, but it's all closed off right now with construction, but there was no sign. So they have fixed that. But even still, I was sitting back there at Harbor Galley earlier today, and just dozens of people going in trying to find their way to Galaxy's Edge. And I kept telling everybody, oh, I'm so sorry, it's closed, like I work here. I'm so sorry. Pathway closed. We're just going to stand in the shade over here and show you the front of the mansion, because lots of things coming very, very soon. And we have heard there's some new things coming inside the mansion, some new special effects that you will enjoy. Don't think too big. It's mostly the same ride that it always has been, but there, I think, is a new special effect waiting for you in the attic. Maybe a certain murderous person has changed a little bit. I think that's all I can really say. And they've rebuilt a lot of the infrastructure, but most of what we can't see on the other side of this wall is queue area. It's going to be very interactive and very beautiful. Not done. Not done. People keep asking me if I'm upset that they're changing the queue. I couldn't care less.
I'm sure they're scrambling, as usual. As usual.
This is Red over here. Have you met her before?
You know, I have not. I didn't know they had a red out in the park. So that's great.
Remember the redhead from Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yes.
They threw her out of the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh.
You know, she's been changed into Red the pirate. So Red, the beautiful redhead, is now the redheaded pirate, and now they have her as a walk-around character just to sell the figure to people.
I like that. It's the way it should have been anyways, right?
Very classic. Now, I'm headed over here for a reason, Matt, and I'm hoping that you can shed light on something for me, and he can, folks. But for years, people have asked us about this cutaway. Now, if you are familiar, you've seen this before, and you've heard all the different rumors about 1764 and this cutaway here along the rivers of America. Give me a thumbs up really quick so I know that you know what we're talking about, because Matt, I want you to think about all those rumors. Matt's going to tell us the truth. Matt?
Okay, you ready for the truth?
I'm ready for the truth.
Okay, so I was working character facades at the time, and I was working on the walls, and my boss came by and he says, I want to have a bricked in galley here, bricked in, and I want a cornerstone on it and put a date on it. And that's all he said, and he walked away. So I said, okay, fine. So I actually put that up and sculpted it and everything else. And I thought, okay, what date do I put on there? And I thought, well, the Columbia dates back to the 1700s, right? Okay, so I put 1764, which is actually 200 years before my birth. So I was born in 1964. So okay, so this was my little hidden
1764 secret. Is really an homage to you.
Quietly, yes. I did
love
it for me.
I love it.
Then the art director came by and she saw this and she says, well, Matt, that looks pretty good, but I don't get it. What's 1764? And I said, well, they built this area for the Columbia to port. This port they built in 1764, so they have a place to tie off. And as we're walking down this way, I'm telling her this story, and I could see her kind of frowning. And I said, okay. The truth is, John told me to put a date. I put 200 years before my birth. And she says, now that sounds about right. And she kept walking. So
that she liked.
She
just wanted to know that it had some sort of a hidden meaning, because
exactly.
That's what Imagineering does.
And I'll tell you, all of a sudden, all of these questions ended up on the internet. And people were saying, are you going to respond to this? Are you going to respond to this? And I said, no. As a good Imagineer, we keep everything a secret. You don't have to know every backstory, right? Keep them guessing. Well, all of these ideas and stories started coming out. And I still kept my mouth shut. And I did a talk, I don't know how many years ago, and Dave Smith was at the talk. And Dave came up and he says, okay, Matt, he says, I have been answering questions to what is 1764 for years. And he says, just the other month I found out it was you. So that was great. So even Dave didn't know.
Wow.
Which was great.
You know, a lot of the stories, about this tunnel, which is bricked up, and obviously it would have led maybe into the mansion itself and been a way for them to get from the mansion to the port at night or in secret. I don't know if that ever played into the idea for why you would even put this here to begin with, but I love the fact that the tie-in is you.
So I've got a little bit, at least for now, until they tear it out, I've got a thumbprint. One of my thumbprints. I actually have a few others here too.
Did your dad have much to do with the mansion other than some early concept art?
Early concept and some of the gags that they were working on.
In fact, let's walk over there because some of that concept art's on the wall now, and we're going to see if any of your dad's stuff is there. I think there are some McKims up there.
There's one painting that I know of, which is the exterior. And you have to understand, this was an attraction that lived at Imagineering for many, many years. I mean, with Walt and then after Walt. And so there were many Imagineers that came in, worked on it for a bit, and then went off to other projects.
Yep.
And so my dad did work on it for, I don't know how long, but coming up with gags and ideas.
You know, early on it was going to be a walkthrough attraction.
It was going to be a walkthrough. There were all kinds of
ideas. Then they went off and worked on the World's Fair.
Yes.
And it just kind of lingered. And then Walt died, and then it really lost focus.
And they were trying to figure out really what is the best way to move people through. And there we go. It isn't easy.
So this is pretty remarkable. So first off, folks, Sam McKim, 1958 sketch of the mansion. And there have been a million different drawings of what the mansion could have looked like. This is pretty darn close to how it ended up, but with one major difference. Sam drew the exterior of the mansion haunted. So you see the broken slats here and the shutters off the hinges. And Walt had said, we'll take care of the outside. We'll let the ghosts handle the inside. So ultimately they did decide to kind of clean it up a little bit more like that. But really what your dad had drawn is really what they built.
Yes, and there's actually an interesting story about this painting. I don't know who and said, hey, Sam, we need a painting, an exterior painting of mansion. And we need it by tomorrow because we're having a meeting with Walt. So my dad actually did this in an afternoon. And if you really look at it, it's very loose around the edges.
Yes.
And then it tightens up as you get to the mansion itself. And strangely enough, my dad would normally be invited to these meetings, but he was not. So the meeting took place with Walt. And the gentleman that asked my dad to paint this came up to my dad after the meeting and he says, thank you, Sam, Walt didn't like it.
Oh.
And my dad thought, what do you mean? What do you mean? He goes, let me explain. He says, Walt was looking at your painting and he decided he wants the outside to be pristine, like Dorothea Redmond had done, and let the inside be run down. So actually, it was this painting that helped Walt decide that, which is interesting because so many pieces of art have been done, from Claude Coates, to
Colin Campbell,
Ken Peterson.
Yep.
Sorry, Anderson.
Yep.
Ken Anderson. And if you look, there's a great similarity between Ken's artwork and my dad's. And at one point, Ken thought this was actually his painting.
Oh. Well, it does look almost like he copied it exactly. But there are so many incredible things. Look at this 52 Harper Goff painting right there. And this is more or less what they ended up building in Paris. But I love this idea, like on Main Street, USA, even you could see it, right? This is the kind of the church steeple over here, and then the graveyard, and then up on the hillside, the haunted mansion. I really love that. Like,
it is fun and it's an interesting idea, but actually when you think about what we've grown up with, and that transition into Adventureland, this wouldn't have worked,
right?
You know, so
well,
you can have great ideas, but it's interesting that when you get down to the brass tacks of it, what really works and what do you need to move.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and just how much it changed. They were really working on ideas for just this tiny little piece in the front.
Yes.
But it's really the magic inside this show building, that gigantic show building that's on the other side of the train tracks.
Which is huge.
Huge. And nobody to this day has any sense of how gigantic that show building is. Because all we see, we really want to believe that the whole ride takes place in this little, that little tiny piece of that house.
Magic of imagination.
Yes, indeed. So this is something new. I don't know if you've seen all the concept art for the new Kew Garden.
I have seen these.
This is the kind of the old Kew down here that'll stretch in front, mostly the same as it always was, that kind of semicircular thing with a little pet cemetery in front, and then the front stairs of the mansion. But then this area in the back was reclaimed from Magnolia Park and part of the area in front of the train station. And it looks like they're trying to give guests who are waiting in a long line a little more to see with smaller queued areas, so that you're not in a big switchback. Because remember, behind the mansion, the front was beautiful. Really, the back there was just a switchback.
Absolutely.
So does it bother you at all that they're continuing to rethink it?
Not at all. Not at all. And actually using the same design and architecture beyond just pulls it all together. So this is brilliant, actually. And the fact that you can't see, if you're standing here, you can't see really too much or just a few glimpses. Makes it more interesting too, because you're always wondering what's around the corner.
Yes.
That's what Imagineers love to do, is to give you corners. To make you wonder what's around that bend.
You know, the most important thing that's around the corner is the whole reason that they really did this project, which is this new covered walkway that leads to a secret elevator for disabled guests.
Oh, that's right.
So really, as part of kind of an ADA enhancement for disabled guests, they ended up deciding, well, we'll give something to regular guests as well with a more beautiful queue, and it allows them to sell more lightning lanes and put more people into the queue.
And actually, for those that have gone the ADA, you go through the exit on the far right, and it's really not all that exciting. So this was brilliant to actually do this. They're actually getting a chance to experience what the rest of the guests are experiencing with this beautiful architecture and planting and everything else.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a good idea.
Here's what the other half of the abbreviated Magnolia Gardens would look like. So this brick wall conceals the mansion queue. So everything on this side of the brick wall will be the mansion queue, but they've taken out that big fountain in the circle that was there before. But look what they've created. A big open space where there's now room for some tables and chairs. The bandstand will be opened up on the back side so you can see the band. And there looks like there are little seating areas and things with steps under some new trees. Very few of the trees were saved. Sort of opens up the front of the train station too. was sort of hidden there behind the park.
Yes, yes. Nice design.
Yeah,
It's going to be a nice enhancement.
You know, they're always trotting out that phrase from Walt Disney, as long as there's creativity in the world, Disneyland will never be complete. And some of the times that is used to explain why things are being enhanced.
Yes, yes.
Sometimes they use it to explain to guests why they're making things worse. And I always think they should be careful when using that quote to not use it to explain things that don't really make things better.
Well, it's all perception too, right?
Yes. We're going to enjoy this quick little musical montage here. They added a Louis the Alligator statue here in front of Tiana's, which I think is kind of charming.
Yeah.
They had a little character connection, but they made him bronze. They made him fit in.
That's fun.
Yeah, and this new they expanded the patio out here. The old patio used to be on the other side of the posts for the covering, so they've added a lot. But they used old brick and they created this new wrought iron work with these pomegranates and tulips. And I just think it's so nice.
It's a nice addition.
It is.
Flip around for a second and talking about brick. So when we did the expansion for Phantasmic,
Did you work on that project?
I did. And these are actually new brick. But what they did was they took new brick and they put it in a cement mixer and they tumbled them and chipped off all the corners and edges and everything.
So they made new bricks old.
Exactly.
Now,
because what had been already done, that Walt had done, was all old brick. And it had been chipped over the years and everything. So we put these in a big cement mixer and tumbled them.
Now these may be different bricks than the ones that you used, because you had built these stands here that people could stand on to watch the show. They pulled them all out. And now they put in these gardens to save some of the trees and preserve the shade. But all of those big tall stands you'd created for people to enjoy the show, they pulled them out a couple of years ago.
Right.
But it does have this that anything has changed. But remember,
not so much.
Do you remember how it was before you all re-terraced this area for Phantasmic? Was this was the river bigger, or what was here?
Bigger.
Why was this so wide? Well, let's go where it's a little quieter.
Sure.
We're shouting over a band.
You know, I'm trying to remember, actually. I do have some photographs.
Because the old pancake house was here somewhere.
Uh,
Was that it? Where the
Aunt Jemima?
Yeah, that was it?
That was
Okay.
it. So, if I remember correctly, these planters were actually a little bit bigger, and the pathways were a little narrower.
Yeah.
So they made them a little bit bigger, and the planters got smaller. But as you said, they were also viewing platforms.
Right. And this area was terraced, so it's still terraced.
Yes.
So that much survived. I love it that they've planted the Disneyland roses in these planters.
Oh, yeah.
There's a little frog they put in not too long ago. Kind of another Tiana reference in the land.
Nice touches.
There are. Neat to think that there's a second generation of Imagineers whose parents built the park that still work on the park, because a lot of the newer stuff here is being done by Kim Irvine, who you grew up with, because her parents, Dick Irvine, who really was is Haunted Mansion. Yes.
Actually, her father was Harvey Toombs.
Harvey Toombs.
Harvey Toombs. She married into the Irvine family.
Interesting.
So, and of course, her mother was Leota. And,
right.
And Leota was one of my 5 favorite growing up. She was a wonderful, charming, kind woman who spoke to me and not down to me when I was a child. And I loved that. And those were the 5 that I loved. Treated me like an adult. They were really interested in what I was doing. And her mom was one of my 5 favorite.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so she would have been here at the park a lot as a kid, probably.
Yes.
And you were here a lot as a kid.
I was.
Did you run into Kim or remember her when she was your age?
I don't. Believe it or not, I knew her mom before I knew her. And then I actually worked under Kim here. I was sent down from Imagineering in Glendale to work at that time it was called SQS, Show Quality Standards. And They changed the name, and I think it's still Disneyland Design Services. I'm not exactly sure. Things keep changing, so
Right.
I've been away a little while.
And it is Imagineering, but it's located here by the park.
Yes, yes. So it's the fact that 35 miles away, WDI is located. It's not so easy if there's an issue to just jump on the park and look at it and fix it.
Right.
So that's why this group was actually started, is to be right here and being able to work on it. And then you also get to know the staff that are down here, the other cast members, and you create a rapport that you can get things done quickly, and they know where to go to get information and to get things fixed too. So it's a great synergy.
They tend to be a lot of really aesthetically pleasing projects as well. For example, you know, while Maine Imagineering up in Glendale is working on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, Kim's team is working on things like the Adventureland Treehouse, the redo of the Haunted Mansion. They're doing the new Lincoln show. So they're working on these smaller but very important projects.
Absolutely.
Whereas Imagineering's working on the high dollar e-tickets.
The larger projects.
Yeah.
Yes.
It hasn't been very crowded here. I'm switching gears back and forth between our conversation, what's going on in the park for our audience here. But 35-minute wait for Big Thunder in the middle of summer is not bad at all. You remember in the olden days, summer, July in particular, July and the 2 weeks around Christmas were the two busiest times of the whole year. And now
Yes, they were.
July, this has been like a January. This
Yeah,
whole July.
it has been
There have been
really
some
quiet.
days that felt a little more crowded. People keep writing me, stop saying it's empty, Dusty. Well, it's not empty. Obviously, there's people in this pathway, but 35 minutes
Lighter.
for a Big Thunder or 45 minutes for an Indiana Jones in July is sort of unheard of. But
Yes.
it's also due to a lot of other reasons. They blocked out most of the annual passes. They've raised the ticket price. It varies. You know, the price used to be the price. At Disneyland, there was one price.
Right.
Now there's like 9 different prices that they charge throughout the year. $104 is the cheapest. We'll see a couple of those days next month, and you can bet they're going to be packed.
Yes.
And then they have some days that it's like $194 one day, one park. And that's what like today is, and which is why it's not as busy. It's kind of smart that they did that, but they may have gotten their numbers a little off because I don't think they expected it to be like this on
Well, and
a
when you
July
think about
day.
it too, I mean, they're amazing how they have this down to a science after 69 years, right? But things keep changing, and so new generations come along and they see things a little bit differently. The smart thing, and the company so far is doing this, is they test things out and they see how the guests are taking it. And if it doesn't work, then they change it. So it's smart. I also used to say, when you break down what does it cost to go see a movie and you're in there for an hour and a half and you're buying expensive food and everything else. Well, you're just sitting in a theater, in a dark theater, watching an enjoyable movie. But here, what are you paying for an hour and a half? And if you're here for the whole day, it starts to even out where it's not as bad. It's expensive to bring a family.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. But when you look at what the value is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Break the numbers down for an hour and a half at a movie theater, and the food is just as expensive, right?
Now, really quick, I don't want you to step on this gorgeous artwork here, but Custodial has left us a pile of beautiful leaves. That's beautiful. I love that. That's just something some Custodial cast member did because they thought it was magical and nobody has swept it up yet.
Well, wasn't I just talking about what's around the corner?
Yes,
So
exactly.
there's something around the corner,
That's right.
Even if it's leaves.
One of the younger Imagineers not too long ago built this new covered rock outcropping here. They changed the shape of the river and removed most of backstage so they could build Galaxy's Edge. And when they redid it, instead of just making it an empty pathway in the sun, they built this rock outcropping which helps hide Galaxy's Edge but also creates some shade for the guests. I like that. Just looking up at the dynamite plunger there for Big Thunder. In the early days, you couldn't walk back here. This was Mine Train to Nature's Wonderland, and when they closed that, it made room for Big Thunder and the ranch, and eventually here, of course, that hidden land back there.
Something.
Something.
A lot of the pressure that if you had to come around to Big Thunder, and such. Well, even before Big Thunder, it would be a big trek around. So
it's a big Imagineering day here in the park. Not just Matt here, but I saw Tony Baxter walking through earlier. So
is he here today?
He's here.
Oh, I'll keep my eyes open.
Yep.
I haven't seen Tony in a long time.
It's funny. He's a lot like finding Maleficent in the park because people will line up to get an autograph.
That's cute. That's cute.
When they trot you out on stage enough. Did you spot something?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, it's funny. We just had on our podcast, Vince, Guy and I, that we just interviewed Tina Rock, who was the longest running Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell, let's show the tree that she would smash into. I don't know if you can see it well from here or not. There's one pine tree that you see the wires go into. Well, there it is. See the wires up there? So there's one tree there that's particularly tall. It looks real. And right there in the middle of our screen, and you see those wires dead end. You're dead ending in that tree, and that's Tinkerbell's wires. But today, they're using Super Bowl camera technologies. There's multiple wires, and there's a machine, and it drives the character back and forth and up and down, and then slowly lowers them to the ground. But back in the day when Tina was here, it was inertia. And she would hit a mattress that was at the top of that tree, and sometimes hit pretty hard.
Yes. Yeah. I saw her many a times being caught.
Yep. Yeah, the very first Tinkerbell was a woman named Tiny Klein.
Yes.
And I believe she was a burlesque performer that then went and worked with a circus, and somehow ended up getting hired by Walt to be Tinkerbell. She did it a long time. She was an old lady when she started doing it.
And I think she was 68 when she stopped, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Well, that's not all that old now. But
now it is.
Back then, they would have thought, "Oh, you're throwing a 68-year-old off the Matterhorn." Now, like we're all of that age range. Like, what do you mean old? So I can hit you with my walking stick. Now you let me know. Is there anything that you worked on here in Fantasyland that we need to see?
Well, so I didn't work on the new Fantasyland in '83 because I was working in the park as a cast member in college. But I ended up working in all of the merchandise locations, but because they taught me to write on hats, I was in the hat shop most of the time.
Oh my gosh, let's go look at it. I don't know that we've ever even walked in there on the show.
Okay.
And I love that shop because there's some special effects in there.
There is some fun things in there. And the funny thing is, just around the corner was the old location. And, you know, when everything, the facades were all flats, and you'd pull the vinyl to lock it, you know, at night.
Wow.
There was no doors or anything. It was just vinyl. And then you'd open it up and the guests could walk in.
So the new Fantasyland really is a lot nicer than the original.
Yes. Amazing.
I know Walt had always wanted more for the park than he got, but they had a very limited budget when they built Disneyland. They built it quick.
Yes,
they built it in a year, so
year and a day.
I don't think, you know, one of the things he was saying about Disneyland will never be complete was sort of a cover-up for the fact that he had a lot of fixing to do. So here's where Matt worked, here in the hat shop. And you guys let me know if we lose our stream, but you can see that they have mirrors here so you can see yourself in your hat, but every once in a while something magical appears in the mirrors. Oh, do you see that? Cheshire Cat just appeared. Little bit of light reflection right now, so you can't really see, but...
And the funny thing is, we had a counter over here. We had counters behind you, too.
Wave to the nice people.
Everybody. Yeah, we used to have...
But how have the hats changed since you were here? Because now it's mostly, you know, baseball caps and then mini ears. But back then, they also did other kinds of hats. Do you remember any of them?
Yeah. Well, we also had the Squeaking Donald at that time. And we would have the, what you call the Gilligan's Island
bucket hats?
Bucket hats. Thank you.
Yes.
That's what they used to call them, the bucket hats. We did have some baseball caps, but not as many.
And there were like beanies. Weren't there a lot of like beanies and propeller hats and things like that?
I think there were a
Coonskin
couple
hats.
that kind of came through. Coonskin. They also had the Goofy hat, but the Goofy hats were the baseball with his nose on the end and then the ears hanging down. Then they became the hat itself.
More like this now. It's a baseball hat, but it's similar to this.
Yes, exactly. Does it squeak? Oh, it doesn't.
But it opens. Like,
It does
that's
open.
cute.
I'll tell you a funny little story. It was very embarrassing for me. Back around the corner here, one night, it's dark outside, I had to reach over the counter to get something, and all of a sudden the shop went completely black, and the guests were starting to gasp, and then it went quiet, and then I realized I had hit the light switch with my belt as I was leaning over the counter. So I flipped it back on, and I kind of looked around like, wow, that was weird. Of course, the cast members were looking at me because they knew where the light switch was.
It's a kind of a warm day. It's not overly hot, but I'm sweating terribly because it's humid.
It's a little humid today.
It feels like Florida.
Well, not quite.
When was
Not
the last
quite.
time you went out there?
First part of last year, actually. I went out for a wedding. But I have spent so much time in Florida through the years working on different projects. And it's not just going to visit where you can have a t-shirt and shorts. I was working it. So I had boots, jeans, hard hat, vest,
Yes. So really sweating.
It was very hot.
Sweat to the oldies.
Yes. That was appropriate nowadays.
Of all of the projects you've worked on over the years, what was your favorite and which one are you most proud of?
Gosh, that's so hard. That's so hard. It's interesting that some things that are not grandiose are a little bit more sentimental to you.
Walkway, my friends. My friends.
A grandiose one that I really enjoy was Tower of Terror in Florida, the original.
Yes.
And I think it's such a great attraction. It's a great building. And I was in character facades at the time. I also worked on Sunset Boulevard, so I was working on the buildings also. But yeah, what's interesting actually is back at just walking past canal boats,
Yes.
Storybook Land. There was a colleague of mine when I was in Rockwork that had to go on vacation. And things were kind of slow for me. So they were redoing the Rockwork just past where Monstro is, that you go through the tunnel. Actually, you come out of the tunnel. And you've got the castle up above.
Right.
Well, that area was all 2x4s, 4x4s, and chicken wire.
Wow.
And it was all starting to deteriorate after so many years. So we had to rip it out, put steel in, and then resculpt to match. And okay, so that's not necessarily a grandiose little project, but there were people that my dad worked with and that I knew as a child that had been up there sculpting it. So Claude Coates, Fred Jurger, I'm trying to think of some of the other gentlemen that were actually up there sculpting this stuff. And here I was matching it.
Wow.
And it was kind of neat to be the next generation to appreciate these people, to have known them, and then to duplicate what they had done. And I tried to keep it as close as I possibly could, and with the crew that I had. And it wasn't just me, but that one was kind of special. And then in 2000 into 2001, I co-art directed the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. So that show that came in for a little bit.
The one with the sound.
With the sound.
I
Yeah,
remember
binary
meeting
sound.
you in the lobby. It was my first time ever
Oh.
meeting you on the opening day.
Yes.
And Lincoln had just given me a haircut
Yes.
and whispered in my ear. And I came out to the lobby and there was this one really sharply dressed guy standing in the lobby just listening to people's comments. And I went up and asked you, did you work on this project? And I was just a young kid, into Disney. And that was my first time meeting you.
Wow, that was the first time.
Yes.
Wow. Well, then that makes it special for both of us, then,
Yeah.
huh?
Of course, now it's so crazy because we've worked together on all sorts of things. But back then, I was just a fan. I hadn't even started Mice Chat yet.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you had done this thing to Lincoln, and there was no real online commentary about it because the
Not
internet
back
was
then.
really new.
Yes.
And So you could get away with doing something like today if you tried to try something. I think they called it binaural sound.
Yes, binaural
right?
sound. Yeah.
Today, if you tried to do something new like binaural sound in Lincoln, before the project even opened, you would have been drawn and quartered and killed.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
There's not as much leeway today to try new things.
I have to tell you something. Every time I walk past this area,
Yes.
so this planter and where the old escalator used to go up
Right.
to the monorail, I think of this amazing story that Haley Mills told. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
No.
So, it's one of my favorite Walt stories, actually. So Walt was taking Haley Mills around the park, and Walt was usually pretty good about cutting through lines. He didn't like to do that, but he had Haley Mills, and they had a schedule to stick with. So he came in and he cut the line right here to go up the escalator. And all of a sudden, this guy says, excuse me, who do you think you are? Do you think you're Walt Disney or something? You can't cut the line. And Haley Mills Walt said, he cleared his throat. He says, well, actually, I am. And at that point, the gentleman that stopped him realized who he was, and he fainted into the planter. Haley Mills saw this happen. And then they scurried up the ramp to get onto the monorail. I love that story.
What I really love about the story is you saying Walt didn't like to cut the lines.
No.
And which, of course, today the executives wouldn't even think twice about it because there's not that same perception about we need to experience the park like a guest, which I think is really important. I wish that some of those early ideas of Walt's and his suits would be in the parks all the time. In fact, I know that many of them, Alice Davis even talked about one time Mark Davis dressed up as a character and had to walk through the park. And it wasn't so much a challenge, but they felt like they needed to go incognito and see what the guests see. I wish more of that would happen today. The parks still have a lot of magic, but there's certain areas that I just feels to me like if somebody had just spent a little bit of time being a guest for a day, they maybe would have put a little more shade in this spot.
Well, what's interesting is actually my dad used to get a list of complaints. All the Imagineers would have the opportunity to look at a list of complaints so they could see what was working and what wasn't
the kind of complaints
working.
people were leaving at guest relations, for example?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I mean, some of them would be rather silly. There was a gentleman smoking in front of me in the line. Well, what are the Imagineers supposed to do with that, But they were sending all of the complaints, and there were also compliments too. But that way, the Imagineers could see what's working, what's not, what's frustrating the guests, and then move on from there. Yeah, make a change.
That's interesting. I hope they're still getting all of that. I know that guest relations isn't supposed to take any advice from guests anymore because then legally you owe that person. So there's certain rules nowadays that, like a guest can't come in and say that.
Right.
Because then if you end up building one, they'll say they're the ones that came up with that idea.
Well, it's like approaching a Hollywood writer and saying, I've got this great idea for a script for this plot.
Exactly.
Like, la, 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 la. I can't hear you, sorry.
We're going to come up here and see if we can get on the train, and it looks like a pretty short line, so I'm going to ride the train for the last little bit of our journey and give us a little more time to chat, because there are a few things going on right now with you and about your dad that I think we should take a moment to chat about.
Okay.
You had sort of mentioned earlier that you've been doing a podcast with Vince, and I want you to tell people what that podcast is called and where they can find it, because you really do. You interview a lot of really great people and have a lot of great stories.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so it's called Disney Antiquities and Collectibles Podcast. It's on Facebook, and also it's after that's live, and then we also drop it onto YouTube and Spotify, so you can find it there also. And I was actually talking to Vince one day, and I said, Vince, my dad would be turning 100 this December, which kind of blew me away. And he said, well, Matt, you've got to do something about that. You guys have to do something. So in a nutshell, we've been moving things around. We haven't locked this down completely, but it looks like we're having on Sunday November 10th. In fact, I think this is news for you too. November 10th, which is a 3-day weekend for Veterans Day. We're going to be at the Bowers Museum. We're going to have 2 showings, and if it's really popular, we can squeeze in a third. We're going to have a half-hour pre-show and then another hour and a half of discussion, so people can learn who my dad was and how he got started, both in the film industry first and then getting into the arts.
Okay, I'm stopping you because you just said something that almost no one knows, because people know your dad was Sam McKim, the legendary Imagineer.
Yes. They
do not realize that he started as a child star in Hollywood.
He did. 1935 was his first movie, and then his last one was 1952. So in between all of that, he did 2 wars and 2 art schools. He actually always wanted to be an artist, and he got a chance to work at 20th Century Fox in the art department, and he turned down John Ford, actually, in The Long Gray Line.
Wow.
So to be an actor, to stop being an actor and to be an artist.
Wow.
And then when things got slow, Lyle Wheeler said, I'm going to have to send you over to the Disney Studios, go help Walt with this theme park idea, and then we'll call you back. And he never came back. 32 years later, he retired.
That's
So-
incredible. And what year did he start in what year did he start in the studios? Because he was an animator?
No, he was not. No, he didn't. He was actually temporarily brought in to work on Disneyland, and that was 1954, the end of 54.
So right before Disneyland.
Yes, yes.
So he did his last movie and almost immediately starts working with Walt on this park.
Almost. And we just came across a piece of paper that my dad had written down when he was at 20th Century Fox. The information, time, date, and who to meet at the Disney Studios. And it was Dick Irvine. You were mentioning Dick Irvine. It's written right there. He was meeting Dick Irvine for the meeting. But anyways, we're also going to have another celebration, and it's the centennial celebration at the Walt Disney Studios. I should be careful. We haven't locked that down yet.
At an undisclosed location.
I slipped up, didn't I? It looks like we're going to get the theater, and I'm working that out. We just don't have it solidified, and that will be in December. My dad's birthday was the 20th, so we're going to try to get as close as we can to that.
Look at that, folks.
Good time.
Big red train. This is the forward-facing seats. And I can't remember, some of them they call excursion cars. Are those the ones that face inward? And then these are just, I shouldn't say. They had multiple different types of cars, including cattle cars.
In the very beginning, they were cattle cars, yeah. When my parents were here for opening, that was one of 2 things that they saw, was the trains. It was so crowded that day.
But still, I mean, on a crowded day, I go to the trains.
Oh, yeah.
And once you're on, they don't kick you off. They don't click a ticket, and a lot of parks, you know, they take 1 ticket for each leg on the train, and then when your last ticket is done, you have to get off. But not at Disneyland.
And it's a great place to see the park at a different level, a different perspective. It's a great place to kind of sit down and rest. And gather your thoughts and your energy to get up and get going again.
Now, you're mentioning all of these events and things and stories and your podcast. D23 Expo is coming up early next month, and I know I've asked you to be at the booth, so I'm going to embarrass you in front of everybody. Will you commit to being at the Mice Chat booth at the Expo?
I will.
Excellent.
And I'm hoping we might even do 2 days.
That would be amazing.
I'm hoping maybe Friday and Saturday.
Wait. I'm going to let them go in first so that we can be on the end here, so that when I am interviewing you, everyone will see you. And folks, I'm just going to warn you now, there may be times during this where we're quiet because of loud noise, and or you may lose the video briefly because we're going into a couple of tunnels up ahead. I have gotten a couple of little alerts that we have low signal strength, and I have a feeling that the primeval world, you may lose us for a little bit, but stick around because we'll be back on the other side. That's right.
The commercial.
So D23 Expo is 9th, 10th, and 11th in Anaheim, and it's really about the history of the company and what the company's doing today, and they do the big parks panel. This year they're moving it over to the stadiums, so so many people want to go. And they've said they're going to spend $60 billion on parks expansions over the next 10 years.
Yes.
So in just 10 years, they're going to spend 60 billion.
Yes.
60.
Yes. That goes quickly, let me tell you.
Did you work on Tokyo Disney Sea?
I did.
So that was an example of it going quickly, because that was the most expensive theme park ever built at the time it was built. An unheard of amount of money. It was like $7.9 billion or something. A third of that money for Walt Disney World.
Oh, right.
And Disneyland is only getting a little under $2 billion.
Just under.
Yeah. They're just warning us that we can't get off the train at New Orleans Square, which is fine with me. We started there.
Will we get a better peek, maybe, at the queue?
Oh, we better. I hope so. We will definitely try to spy what's going on. But if you might want to give us an idea, with $1.9 billion for Disneyland, what could they build in a 10-year period? Is that enough for a theme park?
Nowadays, I would say not for a theme park itself. Not in today's money.
We know they're building an Avatar Miniland.
Yes.
And a new e-ticket for Avengers Campus that'll both be part of that.
Yes.
$1.9 billion.
Yes.
So with the money left over, they've teased at maybe something like a Frozen Land or a Zootopia, which have been developed for other parks. How much of that build cost is development? And if the development has already been done for another theme park, does it cut a lot of the cost out?
I can't answer completely and precisely, but but it's interesting. We were talking about Tower of Terror. So Tower of Terror was much more complex in Florida, but yet when they brought it to the other parks, it was simplified. And I kind of wonder, if you were trying to save money, how did you save it?
That's right. We're going to enjoy this because the loud section. So enjoy the Grand Canyon, everybody.
That was the Grand Canyon as we know it today. But it wasn't always this way. Now, let's travel back in time, way back in time, to the fantastic past of the primeval world, land of the dinosaurs.
Ford Magic Skyway right here.
Isn't that amazing when you think of it that way?
From the World's Fair.
60 years old. I've never thought of it that way.
Wow. I still love
We're
that.
now
I do
returning
too.
to our own
A
time.
lot of taxidermy
Main
and
Street Station.
then
You know, it goes back to your childhood also, though, and remembering it,
Yeah.
viewing it as a child.
it sort of was a necessity as well. They were trying to hide backstage, and so they just built a tunnel for the train. And how can we plus this up? Which
There you go.
What was fond of doing? They plussed it up by putting the diorama in. And
I always wondered why Florida didn't do something like that. Because
they
you
have
look
so much
outside the
more
park,
room.
though.
Right.
Yeah, in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, and in Tomorrowland, you're seeing the Contemporary Hotel.
Yes,
and
yes.
They didn't even try to hide it.
I've always wondered. I didn't know who I should ask that
Well,
question.
It gets to be 120 degrees for 100% humidity. They probably just didn't want to bake everyone.
Maybe, but you could put air conditioning in the tunnel,
Well, you
right?
could, but that would have cost money. We're going to stay on if you don't mind. We have a little bit more time.
Sure.
And while we're waiting here, before we talk about a little bit more, I'm going to do a little bit of... Oh, we love you. Thank you, ladies.
Your glasses.
Oh, you were lurking, and then an Imagineer told you not to forget. Look at that. That's very meta. She's got us on her screen.
Right. I was totally watching, and then you guys get on. I'm like,
That's amazing.
That's funny.
Today was really a sort of scary day for the parks because lightning struck, so to speak.
Oh,
That
yes.
crowd strike, internet debacle that was setting the airlines down and websites and all of that.
Yes, yes.
Hit Disneyland.
Isn't that
So they
wild?
didn't have any ability at the front gate this morning, and their point of sale machines were down, and cast members couldn't even clock in.
What do you
wild?
do when technology,
That
you rely
they
on it so
opened,
much, and
you
then
know,
all of a
like
sudden
they just figured it all out and they opened. Like, you got to hand it to them that when the worst happens, that you just have to roll with it and figure it all
Plan
out.
B.
And they figured it all out.
Plan B.
But it does make you wonder, like they rely more and more on these mobile apps and all of that.
Oh,
This
yeah.
would be a good reason why you can't put all of your eggs in
Yes,
one basket.
exactly. You have to have a plan, Yeah, when I was working here, actually, we had time clocks to punch into.
Time clocks.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, there used to be a company called Sears. And that was my first big job.
Oh, okay.
In Kansas City,
Did you have to clock in?
I had to clock in a big, giant, scary clock, and it used to scare me because it was bigger than I was. And
Yeah.
you have to find your card in the
Oh,
slots
yeah.
and then go over and put it in the machine. It would make this loud. I was always afraid my hand would slip in and get punched.
Well, actually, I had to drive quite a ways to get here. And so sometimes you'd hit a little bit of traffic and you'd be rushing. But the clock didn't click for 6 minutes. So you actually had a 5-minute grace period. So you'd be usually running in and finding your card. And it was, oh my gosh, there were so many cards here. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. But you'd have to remember where you placed it last.
Yeah. And back in the day, regular cast members that were working in the park had to get into costume as well. So you'd get here and then you have to change.
Yes. You didn't take costumes home back then.
No.
No.
And in fact, that was
They were cleaned for you, though.
fairly modern change in the early 2000s
Yes.
or late 99s that I think they started letting some cast members take their costumes home. But yeah, that was a big ordeal. You had to drive the whole way here, park. Some people had to take a little shuttle in, and then put on your costume.
Well, we were parking out here,
Right,
and,
for California Adventure.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, on a weekend, the executives weren't here. So if the gate was up at the executive parking, you could get in closer and get in and find this place. Otherwise, you had to park way out.
In the back. One thing, if you're an Anaheim resident, they announced on Disneyland's 69th birthday this week is a special $69 ticket. You need to buy it before the end of July, and it's good for use in August. And so if you're a local here in Anaheim, take advantage of a $69 ticket.
What a great idea.
Magic Kingdom. We'll be stopping at New Orleans Square, Mickey's Toontown, and Tomorrowland. We'll also visit the Grand Canyon and make a trip back in time to the primeval world and the age of the dinosaurs before returning to Main Street Station. As we begin our journey, remember that for a safe trip, you need to stay seated, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the train.
Almost
And
see the
please
Jungle
watch
Cruise
your
back
children.
there, folks.
Please keep your hands and arms on the train at all times.
It's amazing how close it really is to the track.
Yeah. You can see the tops of the giraffes.
Dentro del tren y cuide a los pequeños. Gracias.
Of course, once again, please keep your hands and arms inside the train at all times. Parents, please supervise your children. Please make sure they're not sticking their arms out of the train. Thank you.
It's a real
That's right, they'll spend the rest of their lives
So be on
writing
the
in
lookout.
shorthand.
You just never know what might be lurking along the rails.
Now that's the backside of Indy. Oh,
Jaguar.
very scary, very scary. It's a
Just ahead is
leopard
the
that they
World
painted
Square
black, and he's starting to fade so you can see the other coloring on the underside.
Once again,
Well, actually,
your hands and arms
doesn't
inside the
a
train
black
at all
leopard
times.
actually have spots?
I don't
I believe
know.
he does.
You're a
And
man
you-
of many.
And watch your step.
I think in different lighting you can see it. Now, as I used to mention about SQS, show quality standards, we used to come in through this gate from the
Right.
office,
Yep.
wait for the train to cross, and then wait to cross.
There's a little gate that you see back there. It's backstage back there, next to the Haunted Mansion show building. Oh, there's a big wall. We're not
You
going to get
can't
to
see
see.
anything.
No, we're bummed out. We really wanted to see. But there's some concept art that we looked at the beginning of the video.
There we go. They're teasing us from the train.
And the next stop we go behind the Haunted Mansion. So you're actually going over the Haunted Mansion because you go into the stretching room for a reason. They have to get you underneath the train tracks. Then you walk underneath, and then there's the big show building. But when you get to Splash Mountain, you go right through it. So
That's
you go
true.
right
That's
through-
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're, if you ever get a chance to be backstage and you see the Butler buildings, they were built by Butler, which are housing the actual attraction. Yeah.
And those two big
different
show
world.
buildings right next to each other, it's really pretty impressive.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Disneyland seems small, but when you figure all the land outside the berm that houses all the show buildings, it's really brilliant.
Smart planning.
Yep. And Walt had no idea they'd be building big giant rides like that one day, so they just had to get clever with the small footprint.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember my dad.
They're putting a little bit of water in the boiler. So folks will wonder sometimes what the trains run on. They're actual steam trains.
Yes.
The boilers are lit by biodiesel, which uses diesel mixed with French fry grease from the parks.
It's actually very efficient. Yeah, I was just going to mention, talking about the parking lot, that the original entrance to the parking lot was actually leased land, my dad was telling me.
Oh.
And Walt was afraid that if the lease ever went away, how would he get people into the parking lot? So Walt bought the Heidi Hotel, right? The Alpine, the Heidi. What is it called these days? It's down at the corner, right around the corner from the 7-Eleven down here.
Right. I think that is the Alpine Inn.
And so if he ever lost that entrance, he was going to tear down the hotel, the little motel, and that would be the new entrance to the park.
Fascinating.
The parking lot.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't that funny?
Disneyland is pretty landlocked, but over the years they have found ways to expand a little bit, and
Yes.
they did buy the Strawberry Field,
Yes.
which is now the Toy Story parking lot. Part of Disneyland Forward, which is now approved, was an idea to build an entertainment zone there, which would have shops downstairs and hotel above, maybe even a big theater, and connect over to the convention center, so they can get that convention business.
Isn't that fun?
And that would be a nice revenue boost for the resort. Back in your day, though, I know they were thinking about using that land for a small theme park experience.
Yes. Yes. And, well, I guess it's actually set in stone as far as what's going to actually happen. But it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening.
I mean, they could definitely change. Disney changes their mind all the time.
They could.
3 or 4 different areas they wanted to build Galaxy's Edge, so
Right.
they do change their minds.
The only thing is you'd have to go back and get the different zoning and
Not anymore. So
permits and
that
such.
was what Disneyland Forward was all about. So
Oh.
the new zoning, they can build anything they want wherever they
Oh.
want. So hotels and
You know, I hadn't
attractions
read
and
that.
shopping are all the same now.
Okay.
So they could build it there.
Okay.
And that was,
Oh, that's nice.
and they have to do that because now the resort is so compact.
Yes.
They want to be able to build hotels basically within theme parks because the shops and attractions will have to be built around hotel towers.
They're going to have to. You're running out of the land.
Yeah, running out of land. So I'm very interested to see what they end up doing with that Toy Story lot. And then also over by the Disneyland Hotel. That is where they want to build that third park area, just kind of woven between all those towers. It'd be very interesting to see how they do that.
Well, and then the only thing with that is, and this is where it came up with Disneyland Paris, is being in a hotel and being able to look backstage. You know, and they did the best they could to block off. Well, and actually, Tokyo Disney Sea has that. Yes.
And they keep building hotels inside the theme park, so guests must like it. Tokyo just built a new hotel inside their Fantasy Springs area.
Oh, right.
At Tokyo Disney Sea.
I haven't gotten out there yet, but yes.
Disneyland Paris, their Disneyland Hotel is built over Main Street.
Right.
And they just spent a lot of money to redo it, and it looks gorgeous. Yeah, I want to stay there. It's too expensive.
It is pricey.
I think I have to sell both kidneys, and I wouldn't last too long after that.
Then you wouldn't be enjoying it.
Not at all. Here we go. We're headed into Mansion, followed by Splash Mountain. So let's see what we see. We're probably going to see nothing, folks.
I always wondered why, or why they didn't pursue the city to approve expanding the monorail. And I always thought it'd be interesting to actually have 2 monorails, or possibly 3, but one would be actually for cast members, so you could have cast member parking off-site, and a monorail system bringing them in, just them.
Welcome aboard the Disneyland Railroad. To ensure a safe ride, stay seated with your hands,
We're going to build a big entertainment zone out by the stadiums.
Oh,
It'd be wonderful to run a monorail to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the backside.
Y mantenga las manos, brazos, pies y piernas dentro del tren y cuide a los pequeños. Gracias.
We're now entering the Bayou, soon to be home to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Princess Tiana swears there's magic out here, and wherever there's magic, there's bound to be surprises. Blue skies and sunshine guaranteed. Speaking of surprises, this place we're passing over is chock full of them. Here in
Construction, folks.
you can join Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, and other beloved critters on fun-filled adventures where anything can happen.
Hungry Bear is closed right now as well. The whole land is closed right now, folks, so you can't get into Critter Country or into Galaxy's Edge from this path. You have to walk the long way around the river through Frontierland. You can see them working on
Scaffold is up.
because of the shade
As we steam
trims
past
down.
Hungry Bear Restaurant, the last outpost in these parts, we're now joining up with the Rivers of America and entering the frontier as it looked more than a century and a half ago. This is my favorite part of the journey. Around every bend, there's natural beauty as far as the eye can see.
Probably one of my favorite places in the whole park. Just
And they did a nice job with the expansion, you know, with the pushing everything out, or back, I should say.
it's shorter, but it doesn't necessarily feel shorter.
No. Nicely done.
There is the revered Indian shaman, sharing his stories with those in the Great River Valley below.
The original Indian village was one of my dad's designs.
People
I didn't
like
know
you
that.
have been riding these rails since the 1800s, traveling through nature's wonderland in a matter of days.
There's a good
rather
Walt
than
story
the
I'll have to
months
share
it
with you a little
takes
bit
by
later
people
when
over
it's
stagecoach.
not as noisy.
Steam power not only
Beverly
fuels
Rose was
these
wondering
iron
if
horses,
Disney
but
purchased the
dreams of a
Carousel
whole
Hotel. They
generation
did.
as moved
They tore it
west
down,
to the
and it's
frontier.
going to be where the bridge is going to be to the new parking structure that was approved under Disneyland. So you have a good memory, Beverly.
Thunder Mountain, where I hear that mysterious spirits have grabbed hold of those mining trains and
there's
turned them
the
into
tree.
the wildest ride in
There
the
it is.
wilderness.
There's that tree.
I think this platform.
We both said the same thing. See, like, what's like happening here?
Lots of fake bird noises, but they work.
Yeah.
There's a fox family that you can sometimes see
Right
in the
here.
yard.
You know, way back when, those were all taxidermy, and they would wear out and have to be replaced. And then they went to the artificial fur, and then they went to fiberglass.
Mickey and Minnie Mouse. Our next stop is Toontown Depot, official train station for Mickey's Toontown, a cartoon home where Mickey, Minnie, and all their friends live.
So we're in bonus time, folks, so I know some of you get really excited when we're in bonus time. So hip hip hooray, I'd like to see your shouts of joy, because we're going to make it to one more station at least here on this tour. But Matt, I have a question for you, because you mentioned the taxidermied animals being used out in the open like that. What about the skulls in Pirates of the Caribbean? Is it true that some of them were real? Did you ever hear about that?
You know, I've heard so many different stories, but I have never heard from a proper source.
Yeah.
Though if it is true, they were all removed.
There's one on the headboard of the captain's that just looks so different than everything. Like all the other skulls are like whiter and smaller.
Yeah.
And there's just one big one that's on the headboard that looks like it could possibly be real, but
I don't know if they would be allowed
to make a statement like that.
I don't know if they'd be allowed to do that today. You know what I
Even though
mean?
It's been there forever?
Yeah, I don't know.
Guillermo del Toro is in a lot of trouble. I'm pretty sure that his whole house is built on the bones of the dead.
Yes. Very true. Very true. You know, I don't know who I would talk to actually get a truthful answer out of that.
Everyone that I've asked has all said the same thing as you. They're like, I've heard that story. Like, nobody seems to know.
You know what? Actually, I think he is still around, and he worked on the original Pirates, and he was in charge of props. I was going to track him down for a podcast anyway.
Okay, you should do that.
So I'll ask him.
Now we have a reason for a new podcast.
There you go. There you go. Yes. So I will track him down, and if he's still alive, we're going to do a podcast, and we will ask him that question.
Find out.
We will ask him that question.
I'm sure there are a lot of props in that ride in particular that are fascinating. So they used to go to antique shops in New Orleans and all over the world and find things, and it was incredible.
It is amazing what Disney has in their parks. And actually the lobby for Tower of Terror has, I know the chairs, there's 2 chairs in there, and I think a table that should be in a museum. They are, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're 17th century antiques. And the chairs were, and I believe the table, were taken to a specialist and told to duplicate them. So you'll see multiple chairs that all look the same, but 2 of them are actually very old originals.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a trunk, and I'm trying to think of where it's at in Tokyo Disney Sea. And there are a lot of antiques in there, but it's a Spanish trunk that's completely metal with all the gears and everything, the locking mechanism. Once you open it, you can see all of these gears and such. Beautifully done. And I can't remember exactly how far back that dates to, but it's old. It's old.
Of all of the attractions in all the Disney parks all over the world, which is your favorite?
Attractions or parks?
Attractions.
Oh gosh. That's a hard one. You know, I am a little partial to Disneyland because I grew up with it. And it's original. You know, I love Pirates. I love Mansion. And as far as like a more of a thrill ride, I've always loved the Matterhorn. I love the rattles, the actual feel. It's you feel the track itself. And actually, at some point when they changed the vehicle itself, it was a bit much, and it wasn't all that comfortable. I'm not as big of a fan as the vehicles before this one, but I've always loved Matterhorn. You know, it's very intimate.
It is.
The vehicles and the cave itself, and going through the tunnels. There's an intimacy with that attraction.
It just celebrated, I think it was its 65th anniversary.
Last year, right? 1958.
This year, just like a month ago. And it shocks me when you zoom around it on the Matterhorn how much attraction they built in a very small space. That show building is small.
Yes.
And it's completely hidden inside of a mountain.
Yes.
And it's
and you used to go through it with the sky buckets.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you go around it in the Matterhorn. It's on the submarine lagoon, essentially. It's really a brilliant attraction. They don't build compact anymore. Like, attractions need big show buildings nowadays. Like, Imagineers want space to design things.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. And I never thought about that so much. But, you know, I wonder, at least for Disneyland, if there are too many seismic precautions that they have to go through, you know, limitations. I wonder.
But even on you worked on the Little Mermaid ride at DCA, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Oh, it was Chris Crump.
It was Chris. But I did work on Little Mermaid in Tokyo Disney Sea.
Tokyo Disney Sea.
Yeah, and that's maybe what you're thinking of.
Yeah, it is. But that was a whole land.
That was a whole land. Yes. That was a good experience. That was, and things turned out really nicely.
You know what? I wish we had gotten a land like that instead of Toontown, because it's so hot here in Anaheim, and to have you go under the train, right, under the train tracks,
into
and
the
then
lagoon,
into a undersea environment, that it would just be wonderful.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Or even if Toontown had been
work.
built inside like that. Oh,
Yes.
look at this! The children of the world have come to meet us.
It's that time.
It's that time of day, again and again and again. At least they're working.
Yes. You know, I always find it fascinating when they opened this attraction and all the, you know, the children from around the world, so to speak, but it was waters from all of the continents. That was amazing to me, that they actually brought that water over, dumping it in.
So
that was a great PR.
It was great PR. It wasn't that long ago. There was a woman that actually helped orchestrate that event with all the kids from all over the world bringing their waters and pouring it in. And then she said, of course, the secret was we filled up all of those jugs backstage.
Oh,
but
it wasn't water from around the world?
No, but it's to this day they still talk about it that way, because that was the story.
Wow.
They didn't want to put random water with whatever in it into their brand new attraction.
I'm going to now look at Small World with disappointment, because
very first time they drank it, did they bottle it all up to pour it back in so that there would always be a little bit of original water?
Well, and then who knows what the chlorine did to it, right?
Yeah. So, folks, as we prepare to disembark in Tomorrowland, where we boarded the train, I'd like you all to realize just how special it is for us to have with us someone like Matt McKim, who not only grew up with the legendary stories, and I know you're working on some other things in these events, and I think it's just fantastic because really the story is what we all want to hear. We all want to know more about this place we love.
Well, there's so many stories to share that I think have not been shared quite yet. You know, there's so many people that have had experiences working here, working on projects here, and they have personal experiences, you know, that some of them are quite interesting. And over time, hopefully, and with your podcast, with our podcast, I'm hoping to pull that out.
Yep. And you'll be able to see us all at the D23 Expo starting August 9th.
Please come
in
by.
Anaheim. You'll find us in the Collectors Forum. Just look up Mice Chat. We have a huge 40-foot booth, so an entire row. And please stop by and say hello. Of course, we have a big Disneyland update for you this coming Monday. And if you haven't had a chance, folks, please read our article, A Letter to Disneyland on her 69th birthday. I think it's a very important story and message. We are exiting over here. Take just a couple more moments here, folks, to get you to a beautiful view to say farewell. What a great broadcast.
I have to say, too, that Dusty, you've been so generous to not only help us with our presentations and celebrations, but to give us a little spot at your booth at D23, and we thank you for that.
Oh my
And
goodness.
the family thanks you for that.
Well, what a family it is. Very creative family, and I want to talk to you more about so many things. There's so much stuff that we didn't even touch on, folks, and I'm just going to tease you because it'll make you want to get a ticket for the event at the Bowers, which is coming up soon. You'll be able to find more information out about that on Mice Chat. When the tickets go on sale, we'll run a whole article about it. So don't worry about that, or stop by and see Matt at our booth at the expo. But they remember all of those little games and things that were around the park, all those vintage things. Matt may have a story about that to share and what happened with them and who might own them. That is incredible. And all sorts of little nuggets about projects that were designed by his dad that happened and didn't happen. And they have found artwork and all sorts of really treasures that have been unearthed, some of them in your own home.
Yes,
Like you didn't even know that you had.
Exactly. And little treasures from Disney, and even little treasures from Hollywood, old Hollywood.
Incredible.
So, and we're going to share all of that with you. We're going to bring the actual items so you see the originals, and we're even putting some things on some products so you can take them home. So some private artwork that's never really been out in the public, and even some things that have to do with Disney that haven't been seen or ever, never before seen.
All right, everybody, there's my ugly face again, here with
And
Matt
mine too.
McKim. Thank you for joining us on this
Absolutely,
journey through
absolutely.
Disneyland on this muggy day, a very special broadcast. And we'll be back with you again, I promise. All
Absolutely.
sorts of stuff on the website, so check out micechat.com, and we'll see you again real soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.